Listen to the brutal truth you are desperately trying to avoid. You walk through this world believing you're a strong, dominant individual. You believe that your anger, your aggression, and your explosive reactions are undeniable proofs of your power. But when you systematically strip away the comforting illusions and the lies you tell yourself in the cold mirror, the reality is deeply humiliating. You are a puppet. You are an emotional slave to the external world. You are not bound by physical chains of iron, and you are not locked in a dark stone cell, but you are imprisoned by something far more insidious and destructive: your absolute inability to control your own biological reactions. Look closely at the pathetic nature of your daily behavior. Every single time you lose your temper over a meaningless traffic incident, a stupid comment on the internet, or the careless words of a stranger, you are voluntarily handing the remote control of your own brain to a complete idiot. You are allowing someone who does not even care about your existence to entirely dictate your heart rate, your blood pressure, and your psychological state for the rest of the day. This is the absolute definition of weakness. You think raising your voice makes you look like a king, but it actually exposes you as a fragile, reactive peasant who cannot even govern his own mind. Why do you willingly give away your sovereignty? Why do you allow the chaotic, unpredictable actions of weak people to penetrate your mental fortress and completely destroy your focus? This emotional dependency is a lethal poison that is slowly killing your empire before it even begins. You have traded the brutal, glorious, independent path of the untouchable conqueror for the safe, pathetic, predictable path of the reactive victim. You are constantly bleeding, vital energy exploding at minor inconveniences and draining your aggressive potential on completely worthless battles. It is a pathetic, exhausting existence. The modern world has weaponized this biological weakness. Engineering, entire digital platforms, and social environments deliberately designed to make you angry, because an angry man is a predictable, easily manipulated man. You see a trigger, you react, and your entire emotional state fluctuates based on the chaotic actions of ghosts. A man who cannot control his own temper is a man who can be completely destroyed by a single whisper. You have handed the control panel of your nervous system to the outside world. It is time to aggressively, violently take it back. Acknowledge the invisible strings that control your mind today. Cut the strings. Step out of the puppet theater and reclaim your absolute emotional sovereignty. You are letting literal losers dictate your heartbeat, and it is a disgusting display of mental fragility. Every single time you scream at the traffic or snap at a stranger, you are proving to the universe that you are fundamentally weak and easily broken. Stop embarrassing yourself. To completely destroy this pathetic reliance on your own anger, we must brutally dissect the illusion of righteousness. You absolutely love the feeling of being offended. You've secretly craved the rush of adrenaline that floods your veins when you believe you have been wronged by the world. It gives you a fake, temporary sense of moral superiority. When you are angry, you do not have to focus on your massive personal failures or your lack of discipline, because you can completely blame your miserable state on the injustice of others. This is the ultimate coping mechanism of a fundamentally weak mind. The Stoic philosopher Seneca wrote extensively on the madness of anger, calling it a temporary insanity that completely overrides all logic and reason. He understood that anger does not solve the problem, it entirely becomes the problem. Look at the absolute absurdity of your rage. You scream at inanimate objects when they break. You curse at the chaotic weather as if the sky gives a single damn about your personal schedule. You hold toxic, grudging resentments against people who have completely forgotten that you even exist. This is not the behavior of an apex predator. This is the exact behavior of an undisciplined child throwing a tantrum because reality refuses to bend to his specific expectations. The brutal truth you avoid is that the universe owes you absolutely nothing. The world is going to be incredibly unfair, completely chaotic, and brutally disrespectful. That is the fundamental nature of reality. When you react with blind fury to this simple, in fact, you are fundamentally arguing with gravity. You are drinking poison and desperately waiting for the other person to die. The illusion of righteousness completely blinds you to your own monumental stupidity. Every second you spend aggressively defending your wounded ego is a second stolen from the actual brutal work required to build your empire. You're wasting your incredibly limited time on this earth fighting imaginary battles in a completely meaningless theater. A true king does not descend from his throne too aggressively, fight a barking dog in the street. He simply ignores the noise and continues to rule his domain. You must violently tear down this illusion. You are not a holy crusader fighting for universal justice. You are simply a reactive, biological machine being entirely manipulated by cheap external stimuli. Recognize the humiliation of this state. You wrap yourself in this pathetic blanket of victimhood because it is so much easier than admitting. You lack basic self-discipline. You point your finger at everyone else, the system, your boss, the random idiot on the street, because looking in the mirror absolutely terrifies you. You are a coward. The world does not care about your hurt feelings or your fragile ego. Your righteous anger is just a temper tantrum, a disgusting excuse for your absolute failure to control your own pathetic impulses. Wake up and smell the ash of your burned potential. To completely escape this pathetic cycle of emotional slavery, you must systematically construct an impenetrable Stoic fortress. Inside your own mind, you must undergo a brutal psychological rewiring where you become completely indifferent to the chaotic provocations of the external world. You must fundamentally understand the core principle of Marcus Aurelius, the emperor of the Roman Empire. He commanded massive legions and ruled the known world, yet he realized that his only true domain was the fortress of his own mind. He wrote, "Choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed, and you haven't been." This is the ultimate supreme superpower of human existence. You absolutely cannot control them. Disrespectful words, the malicious actions, or the pure stupidity of the people around you, but you have absolute control over how you choose to process that information. Building the Stoic fortress means intentionally creating a massive psychological gap between the external stimulus and your internal response. In that specific gap lies your absolute freedom. When someone insults you or a situation goes catastrophically wrong, your default biological instinct is to instantly explode. You must brutally suppress that weak instinct. You must train yourself to observe the insult objectively, as if you are a cold clinical scientist observing a fascinating but completely harmless insect. The insult is just a vibration of air, completely powerless until you voluntarily choose to attach meaning to it. Why would you ever choose to grant power to something that is designed to destroy your peace? You must become like a massive, immovable stone cliff, standing defiantly against a violent, crashing ocean storm. The waves of human stupidity will crash against you. They will rage. They will foam. They will desperately try to erode your foundation, and eventually they will recede back into the dark, empty water. And you will remain absolutely unchanged, untouched, and unbothered. This level of emotional sovereignty requires terrifying, relentless discipline. It requires you to willingly swallow your fragile pride and prioritize your long-term mental clarity over the cheap instant gratification of a snappy comeback. You must heavily fortify the gates of your perception that do not let the chaotic garbage of the world enter your inner sanctuary. When you finally achieve this state, you become incredibly dangerous because you can no longer be manipulated. Right now, your mind is a completely open sewer. Any piece of toxic garbage from the outside world can freely float in and contaminate your thoughts. You have absolutely zero defenses. The Stoic fortress requires you to build mental walls so incredibly thick that the frantic screams of the mediocre bounce off like rain on solid titanium. You are not meant to wallow in the filthy mud with the pigs. You are meant to observe them from a cold, untouchable height. Cultivate a terrifying apathy toward anything that does not serve your massive, unyielding purpose. The ultimate expression of this monumental emotional sovereignty is the devastating implementation of weaponized silence. Win. You are confronted by pure chaos, aggression, or blatant disrespect. Your absolute greatest weapon is not a louder shout or a more aggressive insult. Your greatest weapon is the cold, terrifying void of absolute silence. Silence is the heaviest armor you can possibly wear and the sharpest sword you can possibly wield. When an undisciplined, reactive person attacks you, they are desperately craving a reaction. They are violently throwing a psychological hook, hoping you will bite so they can drag you down into their comfortable, familiar mud of mediocrity. When you completely refuse to react, when you simply stare through them with cold, dead, absolute indifference, you completely destroy their entire strategy. You deny them the vital emotional oxygen they desperately need to survive. Your silence becomes a massive, suffocating mirror that reflects their absolute, pathetic weakness directly back onto them. It forces them to sit alone with their own chaotic, toxic garbage. This is the 8th crucial step in the protocol. We have murdered procrastination. We have utterly destroyed the comfort zone. We have executed the desperate need to be liked, and now we completely annihilate the biological urge to react. This means you must willingly and aggressively embrace the immense heavy pressure of the pause. When the world demands a chaotic reaction, you will simply provide a terrifyingly calm execution of your duty. From this exact second forward, your actions are dictated by your own internal compass, your own moral code, and absolutely nothing else. You do not need to prove your dominance by shouting at the weak. The men who actually shape the course of human history are not the men who constantly lose their temper. They are the men who operate with terrifying, cold-blooded precision in the absolute center of the storm. Leave the weak behind in their desperate, endless search for dramatic arguments and emotional validation. Let them completely drown in the shallow, meaningless waters of their own reactive rage. You are stepping out of the theater of illusions and walking directly into the brutal, beautiful reality of absolute emotional independence. Stand up straight. Tear off the strings that have been controlling your mind. Burn the remote control and begin the glorious, solitary work of building your empire in the absolute, weaponized silence of your own unshakable will. Let them rage. You will execute. Let them choke on their own toxic desperation. When you stare through them with absolute dead silence, you are essentially burying them alive in their own insignificance. Your silence is a brutal psychological execution. You win by refusing to play their disgusting game. Let them burn in the hell of their own chaotic emotions, while you stand unaffected, a monolithic force of nature that simply crushes everything in its path through pure, terrifying discipline.